Alright, well, time to talk about the Sport Trac for the first time in a minute and do a video with it since I took my little break. And this one's actually kind of important, so let's get right into it. So what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We are here today with my 2003 Sport Trac XLS. This is, of course, my full bolt-on build street truck kind of thing going on here. A lot of inspiration from various different vehicles. It's got a lot of Mustang, Charger, Challenger, Camaro, Corvette, kind of, you know, an import kind of vibe to it. But anyway, we're going to be talking about kind of one of the biggest aspects of this truck, probably one of the most viewed videos on this truck, which is lowering it. So for those who don't know my truck, it is lowered 3 inches on the back and 2.5 up front. It's not very low by any means. It's a lot lower than it was when I first got it, but it is still, at the end of the day, not a low truck, you know. I'm not worrying about scraping on speed bumps and stuff like that. But regardless of the point, we're going to talk about all the pros and cons of lowering a truck like this, and if it's worth it, do I recommend it to anybody, and we'll talk about all the great kind of aspects of lowering this truck, because I, for one, love it, and all that good stuff. So let's get right into it. So, backstory. For those who don't know my truck and myself, I grew up a lot around the late 90s, you know, kind of street truck culture. My dad was a big part of that in the 90s before I was born. And that was kind of a lot of the inspiration I had for this truck, was a lot of late 90s kind of street truck, lowrider kind of inspiration. Of course, with a little bit of modern performance builds as well, as you guys can obviously tell by a lot of the stuff that I've talked about in previous videos. Although a lot of the mods on this truck are mostly performance based. I mean, it's got, like I said, full bolt-on setup. A lot of, like, you know, modern aesthetic things, like my carbon interior package, my seats, which suck. You know, stuff like that. You know, this truck's very inspired by street culture, car culture as a whole, not really the truck side of things. A lot of people know I don't get along with the truck community very well. But yeah, that's kind of like the whole backstory, really, is I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to do something out of the box. I wanted to do, you know, what I know best, which is cars and kind of the street culture and kind of, you know, the performance side of things, which is why I didn't go full stance. That's why this thing's not on air. It doesn't got camber arms or anything like that. Not that they make them for this anyway, because it's torsion bar and leaf springs. But, you know, you get the idea. You know, it's a lot of street culture, a lot of car culture inspirations and stuff like that that just makes this thing, you know, kind of a like if you were to buy like a performance car but it was just this, you know. So yeah, that's kind of the backstory and lowering. That's kind of the short version. I've done videos before where I've talked in depth about what made me decide to lower this truck and the whole backstory. So if you guys want to check that out, you guys can go find that on the channel somewhere. I don't remember how long ago it was. But anyway, yeah, so let's talk about the pros and cons of lowering this truck, how difficult it was, and is it worth it? We'll start off with the kind of process and how difficult it was. Sorry, my dad has just exited the house. I'm sitting here because I am freezing to death in here. Or freezing to death outside. But the whole process is pretty simple. It's a lot of just kind of, it's not expensive, it's not really time consuming. You do have to have some minor knowledge on drilling to do it, because the block kits and stuff like that. But for those who don't know the setup, it is a Beltec Nitro Drop 2 shock setup with a 3-inch block in the rear and a 2.5-inch reverse torsion twist up front. And I'll go to details what a reverse torsion twist is, because a lot of people don't know what it means. So yeah, that's kind of that. So the back is pretty simple. You know, the blocks are $50, and all you have to do is drill them out, make sure you have the right U-bolts kit. I got the Autocraft kit from Advance, which worked out pretty fine. I had a Beltec kit before, but the U-bolts were not long enough, so I had to get the Autocraft kit because the U-bolts in them were longer and the blocks were slightly better, I guess, almost, for that job. So we wound up using the Autocraft kit, and we drilled out the hole in the bottom. The hole in the bottom of the block is too small. It's not big enough to fit the little piece on the truck that is where the block will mount. So we had to get that done. We had to kind of drill that block a little bit so it would fit. That's the only fabrication you have to do the entire job. The shocks were bolt in. Do not lower these trucks on stock shocks. Don't lower anything on stock shocks. It is a death wish. Do not lower anything on stock shocks. So that was kind of our first big hurdle, was dealing with the the block drilling and, you know, getting the shocks mounted up and everything. The front was, like I said, extremely simple. You put the shocks in, because again, don't lower a truck on stock shocks. Don't lower anything on stock shocks. It's a death wish. Torsion bolts were easy to find. You back them out just a touch until you find the right height you want, and then you're done. This truck, we only turned about maybe a quarter of a turn, and it got us our 2.5-inch drop that we wanted. I believe it's about a quarter turn, maybe more than that. Like I said, it was 2 years ago, so my memory is kind of hazy on the whole thing. But that was really the simplicity. It's a very simple job, and if you're ballsy enough to lower it on stock shocks, which again I do not recommend because it's a death wish, you can do this for $50. I mean, it's a very simple, kind of cheap thing to do when you have a truck. It's the advantage of having a truck on leaf springs because, most cars have coil springs. You have to pay, $300 for lowering suspension. You have to have, the time, the tools to take out the springs and put the new ones in. I mean, it is a hassle to lower a car on coil springs compared to something like this, which is pretty simple, $50 worth of parts and a couple hours worth of labor. You're done. So that's kind of the simplicity of it. So let's talk about some pros and cons. We'll talk about the ride quality mainly. Pros are that it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing if you're like me. If you're in the off-road scene, I don't know why you're watching this video anyway, because why would you be an off-road guy looking to lower a truck? It just kind of doesn't make sense to me. But if you are, cool. Thank you for watching. But that's kind of the main thing for me, is it was more aesthetically pleasing. Sure, it's not low at the end of the day. It is not slammed. But it is more aesthetically pleasing to me because it is slightly lower than it was before, because these things sit tall, sit really tall stock. So getting that ride down a little bit was pretty good. It sits pretty well. It looks good. I can actually see the roof now because I'm only like 5'8", 5'9". So, stock ride height, I couldn't even see the roof. So, and I had to kind of leap in here a little bit. But as it sits right now, I can actually, I don't have to hurt myself to get in it. And I can actually see the roof, which is pretty good. But mainly, it's more aesthetically pleasing to me. It looks better. It has a more sporty kind of, modern sports car look, especially with the wheels I have on it. At the end of the day, it's a lot more my style. And it doesn't have as much body roll. That's one thing from the ride quality I've noticed, is that body roll has gone down drastically. It still has it. Don't get me wrong. And it's still very, very top heavy, very body rolly, because it's still, at the end of the day, an early 2000s Ford Explorer. And those are notorious for body roll. So, and being top heavy. So, I mean, it is not unusual, that it still has body roll in it. I would not expect it to not have body roll, but it is a lot better than it was, when it was new and when it had stock ride height and all that stuff. As far as the pros go, like I said, it handles a little bit better. I wouldn't say it's necessarily sporty. It just handles a little bit tighter than it did before. I will say the steering is still pretty vague in these trucks. They are not sharp by any means, contrary to the word sport being in the name. But it is still comfortable. It's still, at the end of the day, a cruiser. This is not going to be your Nürburgring lap record car. This is not going to be a Le Mans race car. This isn't going to be like a GT car, Formula Drift, whatever motorsport involves like better handling. This is more of a cruiser at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's going to look better. It's going to ride, about the same. I'll get into the whole ride quality here in a second. But body roll is down a lot. Handles a little bit better, a little bit sharper, like I said. And that's really that when it comes to the basic kind of stuff of ride quality. When it comes to the sporty side that we know people like us care about. The ride quality itself, though, is, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's not horrible. So, when you lower a truck with torsion bars with a reverse torsion twist, which is just backing down, like I said, backing down the torsion bars, you do get a slight bit more bumpy ride up front. And at the end of the day, it's not terrible. I've managed fine for 2 years now with it, and it's not, back-breaking or completely uncomfortable, but it's also not spectacular either. So that's one thing to note, is that if you lower a truck on torsion bars, it will kind of make it ride a little bit rougher up front. But when you put lowering shocks like I did, it kind of fixes a lot of that. So I don't really notice how bumpy it is. My dad complains about it a lot when he drives this thing or rides in it, but I don't have any complaints about it. The back rides fine. I mean, like I said, it's a bit stiffer. These shocks help it stiffen up a little bit. The fact that it's lowered, probably a good thing. It stiffens up, but it's a bit stiffer. It's a little bit more harsh. I will say that you hit a pothole or any sort of thing that will make that will bump the suspension pretty hard, it's gonna hit pretty aggressively. But it's not completely uncomfortable. It's not gonna break your spine or anything if you bump something in this thing. It's not completely uncomfortable. It is a little bit harsher and a little bit stiffer, but that also gives you that better handling characteristics that I brought up earlier. So at the end of the day, it's not terrible, but it's not amazing either. If you're expecting a luxury feel, keep it stock, because you lift these, the ride quality sucks. You lower these, ride quality sucks. I mean, you don't get a good medium. So that's kind of thing. If you're wanting a luxury truck, keep it stock. Do a ton of interior mods. Use that money you would to lower or lift these things with some interior mods. Get some leatherseats.com kind of deal going on. Get some heated and cooled seats put in here. great. But when you lower these, the ride quality does get a slight bit deterred. It gets a bit harsher, a bit more stiff. If you lift these, it gets a bit, also oddly enough, harsher. Which is why, again, I said if you're gonna want to keep it luxurious and kind of comfortable, stock. But yeah, that's kind of like the main thing to talk about, really, is that at the end of the day, it is slightly more aggressive ride. It is a little bit sharper on turns. It's more aesthetically pleasing. Body roll isn't as much a problem, especially if you like me and have these cheap, crappy bucket seats in here. But that's kind of that. It's a little bit better. It's a little more comfortable, for me at least, because I like sportier kind of feelings. I like a bit more stiff suspension. I don't like too stiff, but, you know, I like a little bit stiffer suspension, and this is kind of about where I would have wanted it. Do I want to lower it more? Absolutely, I do, really bad. But again, drivetrain tolerances are a bit of a question mark, because it is it's pretty close as is, I believe. So I mean, if we go any lower, we're gonna have to look into all the stuff to do that. Sorry, my keyless entry system just locked and unlocked itself. My key fob's in my pocket. So yeah, will do a video on this eventually too, because a lot of people are probably curious why there's a button here. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of the whole deal. Is it worth doing? If you're into the street scene like I am, if you're more of a street guy and you just happen to have one of these, then by all means do it. I mean, it's a good look. If you can manage to get it go even lower, that's even better. But I will say that the ride quality will get a bit more harsh. It will get a bit more uncomfortable. And you just have to be willing to take that as a trade-off, you know. And again, if you're in the off-road scene, I don't know why you're watching this video anyway, but I appreciate you if you are, because it's, you know, it's great, you know. But anyway, guys, hope you all enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in the next video, hopefully on Wednesday, with some more content coming soon with this guy. So if you guys are new to the channel and like full bolts on stuff that is just odd, and why would anyone do this outside of me, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you guys on Wednesday with a brand new video. Take care, guys. Have a great day.